What's up, guys? Welcome back. I'm Jack. This is my garage, and this is Garage Huts. Today, we're gonna jump into something that's a little hard to talk about because it's so different for everybody, right? And today's topic is gonna be the palate. My palate is different than Marco's palate, which is different than your palate. And everybody watching this has different palates. So we're trying to find some common ground. I've noticed in my Mezcal journey or my agave spirit journey, I am still developing, how to identify those flavors that I'm tasting in the Mezcal. And what I always kind of fall back on is my love of cooking and the flavors of my kitchen and flavors that I've experienced elsewhere traveling. And so let's just dive into it.
Let's do it. I think it's a great topic. I think one of the things we could consider is that Mezcal is the most complex spirit in the world. Mezcal is composed of 85 different chemical compounds. So in all the different types of mezcales, you're going to taste so many different flavors, different aromas. And yeah, there's good practices we could do to really help identify the different flavors of mezcal and other agave spirits.
And I think that's honestly one of the reasons why I was like, once I tasted a good mezcal, I was like, oh shoot, I love just sipping on this, because it is so complex and from bottle to bottle is so different, and you get all these notes that I don't get in other spirits. And yeah, so.
Totally. And one of the cool things is we have some exercises that I've learned in my studies and programs that I did with SEMIS specifically. And that's recognizing the different tastes that we have. We know that there are 5 different tastes that exist. There's actually a 6th taste that's being proposed, and there's some groups of scientists. Yeah. I forgot what it's called and how to describe it, but it's something like an umami kind of taste or sensation. Okay. But there are only 5 tastes that we can taste.
And let me see if I can name them off the top of my head. We've got sour. We've got, and this is probably in no
particular order.
Sour, salt, umami, bitterness, and
that.
Ooh.
It's my tooth. That's my hint. If you like.
Shoot. I've lost.
I was trying to give him a hint to sweet tooth.
Sweet. That's right.
Yeah.
That. Sweet, sour, salt, umami, and bitter. There you go.
Those are the 5
6
tastes
cents that ghosts give you.
Yeah. So check out the description below. We have some exercises you could do that help you find your range in taste. But yeah, one of the things is that when we look at mezcales, when we're tasting anything, I think it's a great I don't know, I was gonna say analogy, but yeah. It's a great point that you make, that you spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So you're recognizing tastes, right? Not to be confused with flavors, right? Because we'll get into what flavor is, but taste, right? If we're tasting a mezcal, we're gonna start off with, what do we notice? Do we notice it's sweet? We're gonna notice sweetness in there. We're gonna notice sour in there. There's a lot of acids in mezcal, and bitterness as well. Some of the different alcohols cause bitterness. So there's also some points that people make is, it's said, there has been studies that say salt and umami doesn't exist in mezcal. There's no chemical compounds, there's no minerals, okay, that's an important one too, in that make up mezcal. So technically we shouldn't find umami flavors and salty flavors.
Okay.
There's a twist to that, okay? So, because I personally, they say there are few that say they taste saltiness or salinity in mezcal, and it could be a couple of reasons. One of them, they say, could be runoff or different elements that are introduced to the mezcal during distillation from the materials it might come across.
Could it be like the water source?
Some argue that it can.
Okay.
I'm from the camp, and I do believe the argument that it's not, because when it goes through distillation, like when you distill water, what you're doing is removing all the minerals, all the salinities away from it. So mezcal passing through fire and through the distillation process, that's removed from it. So technically that shouldn't or couldn't be a reason why, right? What I like and what people have said is that there's certain chemical reactions that can happen in our own mouth.
Okay.
And if you salivate a lot, some people that tend to, I kind of salivate a lot. I've noticed that it has caused some speech that I'm like, am I slurring or something? Or I'm like drooling or whatever. But that our saliva can create some of those salty or salinity, would it be?
Yeah.
So
salinity. Salinity.
And so there are some mezcales I've tasted, particularly in like San Luis Amatlan, some tepestates that I feel like I taste a brininess or almost like a seafood kind of saltwater flavor.
Okay.
And I tend to call that like a little bit of saltiness. It causes me to salivate. And so I don't know. Some might argue mezcal can be salty. I don't think that, but those were the 5 tastes that you mentioned.
Awesome.
For sure.
Yeah. And, you mentioned it, I mentioned it. I love cooking and going into the kitchen and trying new flavors. My wife and I travel a lot, and, we're always trying like the local food and different things that honestly you can't get, even in Los Angeles, it's hard to find some of these flavors, and bringing that all back is such an interesting way. And I go back to that last episode when I'm talking about being a storyteller, and I find such an interesting relationship between flavor and story. And I think, again, that's another thing that brought me into mezcal is you do get a little copita full of story with all the flavors, and finding out like, who produced it, where it was produced, what went into producing it, and I just love the storytelling aspect of it that I think sometimes gets missed when you're just looking for a bottle to sip on and everything. But I know we've talked about memories and how flavor is tied so closely to memories. I like the pine and harking back to like a camping or Christmas time. I know Christmas time has a lot of flavors, on it. And so I don't know where I was going with this exactly, but today we have 3 mezcals. We're gonna taste 3, and I'm gonna cook up a little cocktail for you guys, show you how I compose a shot, a photograph. Gonna be talking about some composition, because I thought composition of a photograph, composition of flavors,
totally.
There's the connection. So we're going to be tasting 3 mezcals. They were sent to us by Tio Mezcal. Don't know too much about them, but I'm excited to dive in and see what they're all about.
Let's do it. I'm excited to learn. I always learn from Jack on these photo tips. He has a great background in media and production, so this is going to be fun watching what he puts together with the cocktail as we taste these, and you pick which one's going to be the best flavor for your cocktail.
Yeah, sweet.
Cool. Let's start with this. This is again a brand it's called Tio. They sent us a gift pack that included 3 of their mezcales, so we're going to go through an espadín, a cupreata, and a tobalá. And learn a little bit about what TO is, what they stand for, and what their mezcales come from. So let's start with this mezcal espadín.
Sweet.
Cool.
Yeah. And I know espadín, we just had Rocio on the Mezcal Buzz podcast, and we actually were talking about espadíns and how sometimes they can get overlooked because they are the most common mezcal, and there's a lot that you can expect from an espadín. But we tasted something from her that was just like an espadín I had never tasted before. It was really, really good.
Oh yeah, from
where was that from?
I forgot the name of that. The producer as well, female producer.
Yeah.
I will say we're gonna taste espadín.
Yeah.
This is there's not much information here on the bottle. I can't tell you what region it's from and who produced this mezcal. So yeah, that would be it's a good note to have. Definitely, I think one of the most foremost things that should be on a mezcal bottle is who the maestro mezcalero is, what is the region from. That allows us to look further into the production methods, what was that were involved in making this mezcal. It is 44% ABV.
And yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good point, and I think it goes back to just kind of what I was talking about and the storytelling of mezcal and the difference between mezcal and the other spirits on the shelf is you do normally get a bottle and are able to see who produced it, where it was produced, all these little things that add to the story and not just the liquid in the glass.
Yeah. I get a nice earthy aroma from this minerality in it. What about you?
So this is where I struggle with espadines. Because I think my palate doesn't pick up the minerality.
Okay.
It's not a specific smell for me. Or I haven't smelled enough to really notice it.
What I would look for too as an espadín would be a very fresh and open aroma, and also very citrusy, like a citrusy aroma.
And that's more of what I'm picking up, is more of the sweet citrus and freshness.
Cool. Very light. It was a light body to me. I'm sticking to that minerality. I got a flavor of earth, some smokiness up front for me in this mezcal.
I will say a little bit more smokiness than I was expecting, but not overpowering. I don't think. I'd still get a little bit of freshness, but you're right. It's like very quick.
Yeah. Quick smokiness, you mean?
Yeah, quick flavor, I think, overall. Very fresh up front, and then...
I was looking for also a fresh sweetness. I normally get like a nice, sweet flavor up front. Didn't pick up on a upfront sweetness, but I could say that I think my wife would be fond of this mezcal. She leans in on the smokiness. She leans in on the bitterness of mezcales. This is... I am getting a tingly sensation.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, the sensation for sure.
Definitely, that's something I appreciate in the mezcales, is that mouth feel. It's the mouth sensations, which is another thing to look at when
I was just going to say, yeah. I was just going to say, we were talking here earlier, and the difference between flavor and sensation, and I'm sure we can put a graphic up right here. But you can see flavor, like we said, salt, sweet, sour, umami, and bitterness. And then you also have sensation, right? And talk to me about sensation.
Cool. So also, again, links in the description. We have a couple exercises for you guys to do to really understand your palate and what your preferred profile is, right? But we have a couple different things here. We're talking about taste, what we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
We're talking about sensations, and we're talking about flavor. One of the things I didn't mention is the aromas. Aromas are the smells and that we get externally when we smell it, and internally once we breathe out. The aromas
and that's the retro breath.
The retro breath.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Which I'd say the majority of tasting a mezcal or agave spirit is the aromas. We're gonna get more of the aromas, spend more time there. So, but right now we're talking about the sensations. Again, the sensations are going to be things like freshness, coolness. We're going to get heat, spiciness. We're going to get astringency, something that's really like drying on the mouth, causes your mouth to pucker. So like a sour taste, right? A sour, like a lime or a lemon is sour tasting, but it also causes you to pucker.
Like
right?
the lemon heads. Yeah.
Dude, that cause of like your muscles really like puckering up, that astringency, that's a sensation that we get, right?
Yeah.
Like when you eat something that's winter fresh, like some gum, or you taste some mint, but you also get that sensation of, you eat.
Oh, and it's one of the sensations that I love in a mezcal. When a mezcal like makes me like a real drying, puckering mezcal, I'm like, oh, yeah.
You see, there we go. So we're having these sensations, right? One of my favorite ones is that tingly that leads into a numbing sensation.
Yeah.
Caused by a lot of the alcohols in mezcales. That's one of the things that I just like to sense, right? So that's we're talking about sensation. Then we talked about taste, and then we're talking about flavor, right? And we're like, what are the flavors that we find? Flavor is the combination of that. Now flavor is when we consider the taste, we consider the sensation, the aromas, and now we attribute that to a certain flavor of, you might say, I don't know, it tastes like wet earth. It tastes like petrichor, like wet soil. That's a flavor now. That's what is soil. Soil has some minerality in there. It might have a little bit of a moisture, almost like what would you call, like a, not fermentation, but like I'm losing my, like, something's being decomposed.
Okay, right? Yeah. And so I guess that was new to, that's actually brand new information to me. The connections is going, so you have the taste sensation, but then the flavor is the combination of everything. So when I say, oh, this tastes like a chocolate something, tastes like chocolate. That's the flavor, which is the combination of the bitterness, the sweetness
of the taste,
of
right?
Exactly, of the taste. Yeah.
That's a great point too, because I think a lot of times our language, we can use the same language for different things. Yeah. And then a lot of times it gets kind of lost in a way that we just roll with it, right?
Yeah.
But that's a perfect one. That it tastes like chocolate. Yeah. And what does chocolate taste like? It tastes sweet. It tastes bitter, right? Yeah. And then those combinations in different ways, because something else could taste sweet and taste bitter, but not taste like chocolate.
Right, exactly.
And what would that be? I don't know, like an orange peel.
An orange peel, yeah.
Could be sweet and a little bit bitter, right? So then it tastes like orange peel, which would be the flavor, right? Yeah. The flavor profile. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great. That was a great way to put it, Jack, because those things come together to make those profiles, and that's where, like, when I'm guiding tastings or guiding people through tasting a mezcal, I don't want to tell you what you taste, right? I'm not gonna be like, this flavor profile you're gonna taste it, but I can tell you it's gonna taste sweet. We could identify those flavors that make up the mezcal. The flavor profile has to do with you and your palate, like you said earlier.
Way to bring it back home. Yeah. Okay, so you have the 5 tastes, and then you have the 5 sensations, and
I think there's more. But there's several sensations.
You have several sensations, which those are standard, right? Those are what they are. And then you have the flavor, which is so uniquely personal. But then with this exercise, again, linked in the description below, you'll find where your tolerance for those 5 tastes are. So I know for me, I haven't done the exercise yet, but I know that I'm particularly susceptible. I notice saltiness more, and I notice bitterness more.
Okay.
Those kind of come to me a little stronger than the sour and the others. Yeah.
Cool. Let's grab another one here and see how we go from that, because I think that's really awesome to bring up. So let's try to see if we could recognize some of that more.
So This is the Cupreata?
This is the Cupreata, and this is from Guerrero. Cupreata is an agave from Guerrero. This one, it says it's in Michoacán. So now I'm mistaken. This is a mezcal from Michoacán. So again, besides that though, I don't know the maestro or other information on it. We did visit their website and try to find that. They have a great team page. Check out TO. They do things giving back to the communities, doing things in the different regions where they produce, but we couldn't really find more information on the maestro mezcaleros and the exact towns that this was produced in, which is some of the things that we look for right up front. So I'm excited to learn more about the brand and what they're doing. Let's taste this Cupreata from Michoacan.
So right away, this is very weird, but I got a smell of. Do you remember? Did you ever have the Gatorade that was made from powder?
That you mixed.
That you mixed in like the big tub. I got like a hit of that, like right up front. The sweetness.
It's funny you say that because you know what it was to me? Country Time.
Oh yes, yes, yeah. The Country Time lemonade packets. Oh my god,
So okay, so that was a descriptor of what was. How would you describe that in the sense of? Very sweet.
Very sweet.
Very sweet.
Yeah, very sweet. With a little. And maybe this is the minerality. I don't want to say artificial. Because it's not artificial, but.
But let me add to that. Okay, that's a good point. So, Jack, again, our language and the way we say things. Sometimes we want to be careful, or we use things right. So, artificial in this case, I agree with that. Saying that is not implying that there's artificial flavors added to this mezcal, but these chemical compounds and certain things that we smell like artificial flavors or artificial sweetness that we find in certain things is something that could be used as a descriptor. Sometimes some of the chemical compounds that compose mezcal might smell like plastics. And plastics, sometimes different plastics have a sweet smell, a very sweet. A lot of alcohols have a sweet aroma or flavor. So it's also, to not call it artificial, I would say candied.
Candied.
Would that be something?
Yeah.
And it brings me back to that Country Time.
Yeah. And this is something something that I love about mezcal more than, I won't say more than the taste and drinking it, because let's be honest. But I could sit here with a good mezcal, I could sit and just smell it.
It smells like a Jolly Rancher.
For like hours.
Yeah. You could spend all the time trying to, I was giving a tasting one time and somebody described it beautifully to me one time. She said, smelling the mezcal is like a dream you just woke up from. And like you're trying to remember it and you can't remember, or like a faint memory. Or the echo of.
Dang, that's a good. It just
very poetic.
Yeah, very poetic. It's another thing that I go back again to another thing that I love about mezcal, and learning about the history of mezcal in Mexico and centuries of time of producing it, and all of the stories and storytelling, and it becomes this mythological almost thing. Where it's a very tangible thing. It's a liquid that's made from agave and steamed and processed and distilled. But the storytelling that goes into it becomes this mythological thing because it has these years and years and generations of people.
It is very magical.
Magical, yeah.
I like that you say mythological, because I think today we do see a lot of brands that will tend to rely on that mysticism or that, there's a lot of verbiage that'll get used in like, century and, time tested, and a lot of mythology with it. And we want to be careful. And again, we don't want to ever overlook the source, the producer, the maestro mezcalero, the community it came from, and what those historical
and I think that's where I was leading to, is like, you do have all this mythological stuff, but then you also look on the bottle and it's, here's the maestro mezcalero. It's a real person, this is where it was made in this region. These are the plants that went into it. You become attached to it, and it lessens it becomes less. It becomes
that
less.
numbing sensation.
Yeah, it is a little bit. It becomes that less mythological and more grounded in the earth and
Absolutely.
and from where it is, and that to me is better than any story, because as a storyteller myself, like I can come up with a story and write these fantastical things and use these big words and really make that emotion.
Yeah.
But when you're grounded in, this is a real person, this is a real region, this is a real community, this is the real history of where this is from, and they're trying to tell a story through the production. That to me is where the real magic is. As someone who loves to travel and see new things and have new experiences and see the world for what it really is, to me, all the marketing as a marketer, all the marketing and branding that goes along with it is almost, kind of just fades away, and I want to just focus on the actual story of the mezcal.
Yeah, I dig that.
Not to get too philosophical over here.
What'd you think of this? I got grape aroma as well, like grape juice. It was very light body to me.
Again, another light body.
This one's 41% ABV, light bodied.
The sweetness comes through on the taste.
A similar sweetness to the aroma, would you say?
Very similar.
Very acidic to me too. I get some acidity here. Almost like a wine that's starting to ferment a bit.
Yeah.
Little vinegar kind of flavor tapping into that sweetness.
I can see that. My wife and I, well, I'll say this. We sometimes leave out a bottle of red and forget to put the cap back on.
Yeah.
Or the cork
That's
back
a
in.
good one.
And then the next day, there's a little bit left. Have a little bit, and it's, yeah, exactly. It's like slightly turned vinegary. But it's still.
And it's like a sourness to it.
A little bit of sourness, yeah. Before the real vinegar comes in, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not oh, this is vinegar.
Yeah.
But that's when fermentation is happening and the yeasts are eating the sugars, turning them to alcohols. When there's no more sugars, right? When they're going past the fermentation, that's where the maestro mezcalero knows when they decide to stop their fermentation process. If it goes over, it turns into vinegar, right?
Oh, okay.
They stop making alcohols and now they're producing vinegar. So sometimes those flavors do get in. The maestro mezcaleros tend to know when they prefer to stop the process. So this was to me light body. This one didn't have a prickliness.
I am getting a little bit of numbingness. Very light, but a little numbing. I will say it's a little less, and this is not a negative thing, but I will say it's a little less complex than other cupriadas I've had. And a little lighter on the body.
Yeah, I'm tasting it. I'm like, what am I finding here? I would like to know what their adjustment was as well. Because of that acidity and that light bodiness. I don't know how to describe it. A little like colas in there to me. So if they're adjusting with the heads and tails, it tastes more like that to me. And an interesting flavor.
Yeah.
Much different than the first one that we had.
That one was pretty good. Let's move on to what do we have? A Tobola?
A Tobola.
Okay.
Cool. Made in Oaxaca. 44% ABV. So note, we had 44, 41, and again 44. Just short of that 45% ABV. That would make a traditional, one of the factors that makes a traditional mezcal. Which that's another fantastic topic.
And that's something, we were talking about this a little earlier, is those higher proof mezcals. Once you get into like the 47, 48, 49, even 50, you'd think that the alcohol would be so much stronger, right? The alcohol flavor. Mm-hmm. But what I've found, and I think which is true, is once you get up there, it's actually not the alcohols that you taste. It's the more complexity, the more complex agave flavors and all this like richness that comes out at that higher ABV, where you're just, I mean, it's dangerous. You can just sip on it. You know,
I like that.
You know,
and absolutely, it's true. It's traditional mezcales. You're gonna find between 45% to 55% and up. You'll have traditional mezcales higher than 55%, which are considered the puntas, high proof mezcales. But again, of all those compounds that make up mezcales and those higher proofs, you're finding more of those chemical compounds. You're finding more texture, more viscosity, more flavors, and more aromas in those higher proofs. So don't shy away from like, oh, it's a higher proof. Hey, maybe drink a little less, right? We're not putting down shots here, right? Yeah. I like to pour like 1/4 ounce taste. You guys might have seen the Mezcal challenge where I went to 100 days, 100 mezcales, and a lot of people are like, dude, your liver, and like, oh, you're an alcoholic. It's like, nah, it's like a little taste, right?
Yeah.
You know, so cheers to that.
Cheers.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, a little besito.
Besitos, ándale.
Yeah. This one is interesting.
Another thing I did right now is I tasted it first. Another technique that I've learned in tasting mezcales is I always do the aromas first. Mm-hmm. It's just like my habit. Before I introduce it into the palate, I smell and I do the aromas. But I've also learned that one strategy is to taste first. A couple tastes, like the first one to introduce the alcohol that we're going to be bringing in. Really, we're going to shock our palate, tell our brain we're going to taste something high proof. And then, you know, you taste it again with the besitos, like you mentioned, noticing these flavors and the retro breath, the aromas start to come in. And then to visit the external aromas.
Oh, interesting.
The reason for that strategy I learned is that sometimes, in a way, aromas can affect your taste later, and maybe do like a pre-establishing flavor that you might.
It's so funny you say that, because I also notice, and in tasting with you specifically, because you're so descriptive and everything, I've noticed that what you say can influence what I taste. Mm-hmm. So I'll taste it and I'll taste the mezcal and try to be identifying these flavors and tastes on my own. And then you'll say something like, oh, like an orange peel. And then my next sip, I'm like, oh, that's orange peel. Without like, does that make sense? Like,
totally, yeah.
It's almost like a cop leading a witness, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
Like it's this weird connection that your brain does, where if you're expecting something,
absolutely,
that's what you're gonna taste, and maybe that's what you're experiencing with that aroma first or second. Yeah, totally.
And it's great you say that, because like I mentioned it earlier, it's one of those things I want to be careful with, because I don't it's funny to hear that, because I don't want that to be what's happening, right? I don't want to tell you orange peel and then, but again, you like, by the way that our brain works, it kind of leads that way. So I think by understanding your palate and understanding the flavors and the tastes, more importantly, the tastes that exist, that way you could identify those tastes in your own palate, so that you're not led by a sommelier or an experience that's leading one, especially like brand-led experiences are going to work in that way. They're going to lead you. You're going to taste anise. You're going to taste flavors of grapefruit, and you're going to taste whatever you taste. It might be that, but and guilty, right? As you mentioned, I don't mean to lead you in a certain path. I do want to guide you in a way, but that's a great point you brought up. Because,
and I think Yeah,
it happens.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier is, you know, my natural curiosity for flavor in the kitchen, cooking, traveling, trying new foods. That's where I try to pull, okay, maybe that, you know, that bite of sushi that I had in Kyoto at this spot, it reminds me of that. What was it? Oh, it was this fresh wasabi, you know, that was so good. Or, you know, this mole that I had in Oaxaca, or these fish tacos, or, you know, it's drawing from experience that I think helps me identify flavors, and that's what I've really been trying to do recently, is instead of directly trying to tie the flavor, I try to think of, oh, what does it taste like that I've had elsewhere, right? And when I'm cooking, I'm like, okay, I know that this flavor will work with this flavor, and we're talking about balance and complementary flavors. And I don't know exactly where I was going with this statement, but I think...
I mean, I know where I'm going after this statement, because you said the sushi that you were talking about, and as you were saying that, this tobala has a little bit of a floralness to it. It has a little bit of a flatness that follows that, which when you said that, I filled that in with like a buttery yellowtail when you said that. Ooh. And I taste this right now, and I feel like I want to go have... I'm gonna go down to Mijo today now. Oh. Take my wife and get some yellowtail sushi.
Oh, this would pair good with sushi, huh?
Yeah. Which is a great segue right now that we say it'll pair with. I'm definitely pairing this today with the yellowtail sushi, so stay tuned for that. But what did you think? Let's talk about what you're gonna do.
Let's talk about it. So again, like I said, I want to do a grapefruit and mint paloma. So we've got some flavors of some sourness, a little bit of sweetness. We've got some herbaceousness. I think the tobala might be a little overpowering in that. I think honestly the cupreata might be kind of nice.
Okay.
So stay tuned. We're gonna whip up some cocktails and show you how to balance your composition of photos with the flavors that are balanced.
Cool.
Let's watch. Thanks, Jack. All right, cool. So as you can see, I've already got my scene set up slightly, but let's talk about the elements that we're seeing here. What I really want you guys to focus today on is the composition. So I'm going to be talking about background, middle ground, and foreground. Middle ground, you can kind of call your subject, and foreground obviously is in front. So if we take a look at the image here, so as you can see, I've got some really nice balance already going on here. I've got this foreground element of the limes. I've got some middle ground of mint. I've got my subject right here in the middle, which is the glass, which will be the cocktail. And if you watch last week's episode, you know, don't make the cocktail until you're ready to shoot it. Then we've got some shallow background, which is the grapefruit, which I'll cut up, and the background of the bottle. Today, we're gonna be making a grapefruit paloma. I found this recipe a couple weeks ago, and what makes this paloma kind of super interesting is some muddled mint. And when I'm shooting a cocktail, I really want to bring those flavors across visually, because it's impossible to taste a cocktail through an image. I've licked my phone, it doesn't work. It does not work. So I've got all of the raw elements that are gonna go into this cocktail, and I wanna make sure that they're represented in the photo. So I've got the limes, I've got the mint, and I've got the grapefruit. And I like to, personally, I'm a student of art history, so a lot of the composition, this is stuff that goes back thousands and thousands of years. I'm not going to get into it today, but check out some cool old still lifes, and you'll see all these same elements in paintings and etchings and drawings throughout time, because it's composition. And nothing too like scientific, right? You just want some nice leading lines. You want some nice balance. If it feels unbalanced to you, it probably is. So you'll see, like, we can kind of test things out. So you're looking at shape, you're looking at size, you're looking at color when it comes to composition. Right now it's leaning heavy foreground and heavy green. Because we have the black background, that's really popping everything to the front. And so what I'm gonna do is add this grapefruit in, and once we get closer to shooting it, I'll cut it open so you can kind of see that red balancing the green. But already you can see that orange, peach, grapefruit color is really bringing a nice balance, both shape and color-wise, to the image. So let's just get right into it, and we'll whip this cocktail up. Okay, so we've got our cocktail made. We moved some things around on the bar, so we're gonna dial in our composition again, keeping in mind those same elements, the background, foreground, and middle ground. Again, I'm complicating it a little bit with a shallow background and a deep background, but all the same principles apply. You can see we've got that really nice ruby grapefruit in the shallow background. We've got this really nice bright green lime in the foreground. We've cut everything, so all those colors are really popping now. And dang, that looks like I want to sip it. We've got a nice balanced image. We've got a nice green in the foreground, and it leads into the pink in the background, and then our nice bottle, it's always in the back, just to keep that branding and brand deals coming towards us. We'll take a look, see what we've got. Again, this is where just your eye comes into play. We've got everything set, but you can tweak little things here and there to really make the image pop and feel more balanced. Again, just like we talk about with your palate, and everybody has a different palate and will taste different things. Same thing comes with composition. If it looks visually pleasing to your eye, it might be visually pleasing to somebody else's eye. So we're just gonna tweak this little guy, maybe flip it the other way. That's standing up pretty nice with the mints, and that mint is dying pretty quick, so I'm gonna just shoot it. Cool. There you go. There you have it. A really nice summer cocktail ready for the pool. And hopefully you learned a couple tips. Just to recap, you want to have a nice balance of color, shape, and size in your images. So with this, we've got really nice foreground of the green. We've got our middle ground, or the subject, which is a nice balance of the pink and the green. We've got our shallow background of the pink of the grapefruit, and then our background of the Mezcal bottle. And it all leads to a very visually interesting image. I've left a little bit of black here on this top right side. You'll see if it's feeling empty. In a real life scenario, you might be at a bar where that could be taken care of with some out of focus bottles on the shelves or whatever. But here we're gonna use this as space to add text for the recipe for those on social to follow. So take a look. I hope you guys enjoy it. And I'll send it back to Marco and Jack.
Right on, great tips. I hope you guys learned a lot taking those 3 tips of the background, middle ground, and foreground. If you guys saw the last video where Jack gave us some great tips on lighting, you're all set to take some great pictures. I'm actually excited to put these to use myself too.
Awesome, yeah. I would love to see any photos you guys take. Hopefully I've given you some good tips. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Check out the description below for that flavor profile guide. And hopefully we'll see you on the next episode. Hopefully this doesn't get canceled before then. All right, guys.
We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks.
Thanks.